Howdy folks, this is Tall Turtle here. Today we're going to take apart and clean and hopefully repair my CH Eclipse Yoke. This thing has been giving me a few problems and it's time that I try to fix it. I've had this for a while. I've had this for about 6 years, maybe just shy of 6 years. So it's clearly out of warranty. I do give it heavy use, and I don't think this thing was intended to be super heavy use. It's like just a step above entry level, but it's not near a professional quality device, but it's been serving me well and everything. And I don't want to buy a new one if I don't have to. So I want to repair this one and see if I can still continue to use it very heavily without having to buy a better yoke. So without further ado, let me tell you what's going on with it, and then I'll show you in the sim what's going on with it on the sensitivity screen, and then we'll take this apart. So what's happening, I'm having 3 problems with it. First of all, when I roll left, everything is fine. When I roll right, everything is fine mechanically in terms of it moves all the way right, but the simulator and Windows, actually too, only sees it going about 65%, and then it shakes on the screen. Not hardware-wise. Physically, it looks and feels fine, but I'll show you how it's not fine. Same thing with pitch. If I go all the way in, it's fine. All the way back, it's fine like this. But in the sim and on the sensitivity screen, it shakes like that. And I'll tell you what the solution is for that. That seems to work for everybody. Hopefully it works for us too. The third issue is this onboard rudder system, which I actually don't use. But it's fine again mechanically. But in the sim, it never centers. In fact, it doesn't center pitch either, which we'll talk about when I show you a practical example. It centers here, but it doesn't center in game. This seems to work fine, but it doesn't center. In fact, it shakes all the time. So even when it's idle, it shakes like crazy. And when I was trying to do a different game, I had this plugged in and my menu would spin really fast. It was because of this thing. So those 3 issues I'm having. Let's go in sim now and I'll show you what I mean, and then we'll take it apart. All right, here we are on the sim on the sensitivity screen for the CH Eclipse Yoke. And I first want to say the results you see here in the demonstration I'm going to do here is exactly the same in Windows calibration. So it's not a Windows calibration thing. It's something inside the yoke isn't working correctly. So it's not a calibration problem. I just want to get that out of the way. Also, you can always hit reset here. You can always hit default to Windows calibration. You can always mess with sensitivity in your dead zones and extremity zones and everything. Kind of, if you are too afraid to clean out your yoke, you can mess with all this stuff to kind of accommodate it, but it doesn't really solve the problem. In fact, it's not even a band-aid. It's just trying to solve the problem. So the 3 issues then, the left axis X, that's your, left and right roll. So if we go all the way left physically, I'm all the way left, and it's okay, right? It goes to the bottom, blah, blah, blah. Again, Windows calibration does the same thing. If you go to the right, though, look, it's only going about 75%, and it's shaking like crazy. And if I do multiple times, this will change. So eventually, I'll go to the right, and it'll stop like here, and it'll shake. See that? If I keep going, do some other things, I do it again. Now it's stopping here. See that? And it's shaking. So it's inconsistent. So if you try to... now it's going all the way. Now it's still only going this far. So if you try to calibrate it in Windows, it doesn't matter. You still get this result. And I believe everybody else says it's a potentiometer thing. So we're going to open up and clean the potentiometer, and hopefully that'll take care of it. If not, I have to mess with these down here until I can get a new yoke. It does center itself, though, most of the time. Y-axis. If you go down, it goes down most of the way. That's fine. If you go up, it goes up all the way, but it shakes like crazy. Again, potentiometer. The additional problem with the y-axis, which is your pitch, if I let go, look, it's not centered. If I push down, it stays down there. If I pull up a little bit, look at that. So that's why I have a dead zone for now. That's the shaft going through the back. It's plastic on plastic. I'm going to try to lubricate it. We'll see how it goes. There's supposed to be a notch thing in there that centers it, but it's getting stuck somewhere. We'll try to figure that out. Now there is a knob on the yoke itself, kind of behind you. It's not tiny, but people don't know it's there. And you can use that to recenter center. So if it's always doing this, you can move the button or the knob. People think it's a trim knob, and it's not. So many YouTube videos I was looking up call it a trim knob. It's not a trim knob. It's to center Y. So if it's off center, you can dial the knob to get it here. if it's always in the same spot or if it's always up here or something. But mine isn't. Mine is in a different spot every time. So using that knob isn't going to do any good because it's inconsistent, right? And that makes things difficult to fly. My throttle is fine. My props are fine. If I come down here, my mixture is fine. Now my Z, that is my rudder control on my yoke, which I don't use, but it is a problem because look, it's shaking all the time. I can go this way, I can go that way. Look, it doesn't even go all the way. If I let go, it's not in the same spot. See that? It's in a different spot each time I let go, and it's always shaking. In fact, I was trying to play a different game once, and whenever I get into the menu, my menu would spin in circles really fast because this was always interfering because it's noisy, see? We old people call that noise. It's not, it's bad potentiometer. Or whatever's driving this thing, I actually don't know. That's a different part of the yoke. So that I'm going to try to look at, no guarantees. You have to watch the video to find out. Look at it jumping around, look at that. So those three issues, the roll, right, or the banking doesn't go all the way. The pitch doesn't go all the way. Well, it does, but it shakes, but it doesn't recenter. See, it's different about every time. And then my onboard rudder control, even though I don't use them, look at it. So those are the things we're going to try to fix. Again, Windows calibration, not the issue, because they get the same results Windows calibration. You can't calibrate this. It doesn't calibrate. It just screws it up. Now, an X-plane, though, since it has an individual calibration, you can kind of fake it by calibrating it in X-plane each time. And it'll work for that session, but that's laborious. I don't X-plane anymore anyway. And like I said in the beginning, you can hit reset or default in Windows and change all these to accommodate it if you're not comfortable opening up your yoke. But I am comfortable, and I've had this yoke a long time. So if I break it, I'll just save my money for a new yoke. So anyway, it's time to open this thing up, see if we can fix it. We can't make it worse. Well, I guess we can, but we really can't make it worse. So we're going to try to fix it, and let's see what happens. Let me take this one out. Alright, that was easy enough. Put those off to the side, I guess. You can't really see. Yeah, you can see where I'm putting the stuff. So I got those two screws. I assume there's one in here. And does not look like there are screws in these two big holes. Do we have screws in here? I assume we do. Yep. And then I assume there's under here. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then under the pads, I believe, for 10 screws. I'm guessing. We're going to find out together how accurate I am. All right, so these pads have screws under them. These two pads. These two do not. Pop it open. There's no screw there. I don't think you can see. Yeah, I can see the shine. No screw there. So I got 2 screws left. Well, I have more than that because the part I cut out is that some of these screws are being really stubborn. They're spinning, but this thing is so old that I can't get them to want to come out. All right, so now that we have it all apart, we're gonna check out these pots. So if we carefully hold the shaft in place, your roll pot is this one back here. And I showed you before that physically it goes all the way. Whoop, I just pulled things out because there's nothing holding things in. Physically it goes all the way, but the pot doesn't register as going all the way, and then it shakes. And then this is your pitch pot here, your y-axis, which your centering wheel here. This is not a trim wheel. Your trim wheel is actually on your yoke right here. This is your y centering wheel. So if things is off center, you can recenter it. But people don't know that. They shouldn't really mess with that one. Anyway, we might as well clean out the pots up here for the, well, way up there, for the throttle prop and mixture as well, since you have it all apart. So making sure things are falling apart here on us, make sure everything stays in place. We're going to clean out the pots carefully. I just wish there's some way I could secure this in the meantime, and I can't find a way without like getting a homemade clip or something. But anyway, alrighty. I already cleaned out the compressed air because it's so loud, but I just went through. I mean, it's very clean in here, but I already cleaned it out. All right, so ideally I would like to have this like, on its side so the stuff can run out. But with this shaft here, I'm afraid things are gonna go haywire, but maybe we'll try it anyway. And that's basically all we can do for those pots, right? We got the stuff deeply in there. We let our run out for a minute till it dried. And we got deep inside, and that's all we can really, I'm just looking to see if, yeah, that's all we can do. That's all we can do with that. It's either gonna work or it isn't. Let's get this put back on the table. All right, so since we're here, should we clean out these pots? Can we get to these pots without taking everything apart? Well, let's take this clip off if we can. It just seems to be like a normal, well, there we go. That was easy. I should have done that when I started. So there you go, just slid right out. Wasn't even clipped in really well, to be honest. Can we get into these pots without taking it all apart? I think we can. So, not even in frame. So let me just clean these pots super quick. Same thing, get in there nice and deep, let it all drip out a little bit. Can you see? No, but you can just have to trust what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing, right? All right, so these are all nice and clean in there. You can't see it, but inside you have access to all 3 pots. I clean those out as well. And since I'm here, I'm just gonna clean up this case really well and get in these crevices where I normally can't get to. There you go, all nice and clean. Again, places I normally can't access. Clean them up while we're here, just because we can. You can actually see this wheel moving, and it actually moves the whole pot. See that? That's why you got to be careful with that. I bumped this, I'll have to realign that later. So let's see, we clean the pots down there, we clean the pots up here. What else can we do? The springs are clean and in really good shape. I was thinking there'd be some grime or something that I could do that would help it recenter, because again, if you let go, it doesn't center itself. See, watch, it's in 2 different spots. See, there's a big space there where it chooses a new center every time. You do have this wheel here, but I don't want to mess with that if I don't have to. So I can't really clean the springs to get them to work. I'm not going to change them out. It does center left to right though. So since it centers left to right, but it doesn't center front to back, I'm going to lubricate this shaft here, because the springs hold it in place, not the shaft. So I'm going to lubricate that quick, and we're going to get this thing back together. I'll piece it together while it's on the table. So let me get some like spray lube or something, whatever I have in my toolbox, and we will we'll get it lubricated and we'll get this back together. Here we are in a different film location to put this back together, because I put all this back together, and then in my original edit I noticed that there were some very important things I did not say, and so I need to redo this section. Also, I'm in a different location because I have to be quiet so I don't wake people up, hence my soft voice. So I have this sitting here apart and resting on a piano so that my wires don't come undone. So first of all, 2 things I learned after I put this together was that I lubricated the shaft here with Vaseline, and it's incredibly smooth now, and it recenters itself on the y-axis, which is never done before, so that's really exciting. The other thing is, when we go back to the original part of the video, I take this all apart to get to the z-axis, to get to the pot inside here. However, I did it with the cover back on, and if you're going to do that, make sure you do it with the cover off so that you can take this whole thing out so you can get to these 4 screws. I happen to have a tiny screwdriver and pliers I was able to use to get those screws out with this cover on, but most people aren't going to have those tools. So keep the cover off and take this whole assembly out to get to that z-axis back here if you need to. So otherwise, let's continue forward here. The things you need to know, first of all, when you put those back on, be careful. Those 2 are okay, but this one, if you put on too hard, it gets really, really stiff. In fact, I took it apart and put it on several times, and it's still stiffer than it was. These 2 move freely like they did. This is really stiff now, and there's nothing I can do about it. I think it just got pushed in, up in there too tightly, and I'm not gonna mess with it. It still works. There's just a lot more resistance, but maybe that's not such a bad thing. So you have more fine control over your mixture, but just be careful of that when you put those back on. Otherwise, what do you need to know? Okay, a few things. I'm going to try to do this in like macro view here, and then I'm going to have to just assemble it because I can't do it all at once. So this, first of all, I just put a little tiny piece of tape on those clips, those 2 clips in here. There's one there, there's one over there. See the tape? The wires kept falling out on me, and I didn't want to pinch them. I'm sure it's okay if they touched. I mean, they're insulated and everything, but I don't want them to get pinched. So I just taped them up. It looks terrible, but it gets the job done, right? So I did that. I want to try to get back here so you can see, but I don't know if it's going to work. So the things to consider, these are 2 rings. This first ring, see this notch up here? Can you see the notch on the camera? Where is it? Hang on. I gotta try to get a better view for you here. See that notch right there? So this first ring right here has a notch that has to go up because it has to fit into that notch right there. So make sure this is up and make sure it's seated in here. See how there's molding to seat it against right in the middle of your screen, right there. This has to be seated correctly and upwards. And it's a firm fit. You'll know when it's right and you'll know when it's not right. Then for the roll access, we need to make sure that is seated in here. Again, see how there's pieces right there. It's pretty easy. Once you get it in there, you can feel it. It's firm. However, it's going to move around on you when you try to put it together. So you got to be careful that it doesn't get dislodged when you're putting it together. Thirdly, see down here, see how my y-axis has come off because I bumped it? This pin right here fits inside. You're not going to be able to see this unless you have one in front of you. There's a piece up in here that it fits into, which again, I can feel with my finger. You're not going to be able to see it because I'm not going to take the springs off to pull it out. But there's a hole here that fits into, kind of like that. And then when I push it all together, it'll go on top of that. Make sure you don't forget that part. So those three things so far. Then the fourth thing is this ring here. It's similar to these rings, but the difference with this ring is it's more difficult to feel that it's in place. So you're not going to be able to see in there. Nope. It fits in there. When it's in place, it won't move, right? But when it's not in place, it's going to slide around and it slides up under here and you don't even know it's missing. So you got to be careful. This is the most difficult piece to get right because there's not much resistance in there holding it in place and you're not going to be able to see it. But if you have one of these in front of you, you'll feel it. See how it doesn't move. So those four things you have to consider: 1, 2 rings, 3 the pivot point, and 4 the front ring. Those all have to be in place. I would recommend, well, see, this is like a friction fit. So once those wires come out the first time, in fact, they came out again under my tape, they're not going to stay in there. And you don't want to get them pinched. I would recommend just taping them up, just not to hold them forever, but just so they stay in place while you put this back together. So those things have to be considered to be put back together. Oh, one more thing. Don't bump this. I bumped this thing and it came out and it was a pain to get back in because you have like fractions of a millimeter to get that lined up and seated in there. So don't bump that. So those are the things you need to consider putting it back together. I'm just going to put it back together now because once you have all those components in place, it just snaps on without any finagling or moving around or anything. If this is all in place, the top just sits on perfectly smooth and evenly, and then you just screw back together. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then I'll bring it back to my original edit of the video. Now we don't need to do any repair in here. We need to do it here, which is a separate piece back here actually. All right, if I use the precision set and push against it, see I'm pushing against the yoke here, or the main body to put pressure on the screwdriver for myself. That seems to work. There we go. Otherwise, I think I'm pretty sure you would have this all apart when you would service this part. But you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Put pressure on the body. Ooh, I might need pliers for that one. That one's really tight without leverage of an actual screwdriver. All right, we're finally getting the front of the yoke, or the yoke itself, separated from this other case back here. And I'm honestly kind of nervous if this is going to work without taking the front of the yoke off. So I'm very happy with that we did not have to take apart more to clean this out. Now there are springs in there, and what's about them? There's a little clip in there. What is going on that is making this such a pain in the butt? Nothing. They're just really heavy duty springs apparently. Okay, heavy duty springs that cause it to not want to, I don't know what's going on. It's hopefully just a pot issue, but heavy duty springs, really heavy duty. We cleaned the pot out, it's dry. So let's reattach this. The wire's sliding to the back very carefully. Again, if you're doing this yourself, some of these things I'm saying are very obvious. All right, everything is back together. No extra pieces, which is good. Everything is fitting nice and tight, and I didn't bind anything or miss anything or screw anything up, and no extra screws. And it's all clean, like it's new out of the box. So otherwise, that's it. Let's put it back on the simulator and see if any of this was worth it and if we fixed our problems. All right, let's go back in the sim, and first of all, I calibrated in Windows just because it's a good baseline to start with, and let's see what happens. First, let's check the roll, which is this axis here. All the way left, it goes all the way, and it's solid all the way right. It still shakes like the dickens, but hey, it goes all the way right now. And it goes all the way right consistently. Let's say if I move everything around, well, does it still go all the way to the right? Good. So that was fixed. It still shakes, but I don't care. The fact that it goes all the way to the right is good, because if you remember the beginning of the video, when we would move it around and try again, it would be different distances every time, remember? But now it goes all the way to the right. So that was fixed, so now it should be easier to make maneuvers in an airplane in the sim. Let's check the y-axis. That we didn't have a problem with. And it goes all the way. It doesn't shake now. It did shake before. It shakes on that direction a little bit. Okay, it centers perfectly now coming back from the bottom. That's awesome, because that's different. That never used to happen, so that's been fixed. How about if we come this way? Okay, this way it still won't center itself. If you're pulling back and let go, it won't center. But if you're down and let go, it centers. Okay, so that's half fixed. So my dead zone will keep my dead zone the way it is, because that accommodates for, well, that time it's centered. Well, so that's half fixed. So we're what, 1.5 out of 2 so far. The axis always worked, we didn't break it. X always worked, we didn't break that. Y always worked, we didn't break that. But like I said, it's a little stiffer to move now. So when I push the red handle back on, something happened, because now it's a little stiffer. Let me pull it off and try it again. Oh, that's better. Okay, well, it's still, you can hear me moving all of them. It's still a little stiffer, but it's better. I pulled it off, put it back on. It's still a little stiffer, but it's better than it was a minute ago. So that's fine, I guess. The z-axis. Ooh, the z-axis centers now. That's good, because it used to be like all over the place. It still shakes a little bit. It doesn't shake as bad. And it centers for the most part. Look at that. So that's fixed. So that's 1, 2.5 out of 3. 2.5 things were fixed out of 3. The only thing that wasn't fixed is this doesn't center coming down as well. It's still better than it was. I'll just keep my dead zone. So I'll call that a success, considering how old this yoke is and how it gets extremely heavy use that it probably wasn't designed for over the course of like 6 years. And we took it apart not knowing what we're doing. The only reference videos on YouTube were similar products, but not the same. And I got it all back together. So I would call that a success. Hopefully that was helpful. I know it was an incredibly long video, but there were details that I felt were important to say. So hopefully it helped. Like, subscribe. Let me know if you need more stuff like this. I'll do it. And I'll see you next time.